people knew he was clownish when they reelected him, but they thought he could kind of get it done. And he's not only is he not getting it
Yeah.
done, he doesn't give a shit about getting it done.
Hello and welcome to Why Is This Happening with me, your host, Chris Hayes. Well, I'm back, baby. I haven't been here for a minute because we did our special With Pod AI series, the AI Endgame. I hope you enjoyed that. We loved doing it. We've gotten a lot of really good feedback about it. We'd love to hear more of it. We're thinking of maybe in the future doing similar kind of special series. I like diving into something and learning about it. And it was also kind of nice, I gotta say, to have some outlet for non-politics thinking in my life. I got to talk to like one of the great philosophers of all time, David Chalmers, which was awesome, along with a bunch of great guests, including Michael Pollan, who's a hero of mine and probably one of the best nonfiction writers alive. So it was great. And thanks to all the great guests. But I'm back today with my dear friend and colleague, Alex Wagner, to just catch up on what the hell has been going on since I was away doing other things, and what take the temperature on the hellish cauldron that we live in, the slowly boiling reflecting pool that us frogs are sitting in.
The algae filled.
The algae. Oh my God, we should talk about that. Alex, of course, is host of Runaway Country on Crooked. She's also an MS Now senior political analyst. She's the author of the Substack How the Hell with Alex Wagner. Alex, welcome back.
Thanks, man. I thought I was here to do the Knicks podcast series that you wanted to dig
into. It would be really
into.
funny if I was like, okay, today we're going super technical on how models are trained for the 8th episode of our AI series. I brought in Alex Wagner, who I haven't told is the guest for this.
Who's literally never used Claude.
That would have been a funny bit.
That would have been funny, and also a terrible episode.
I should have done that.
Terrible episode of AI, but funny.
So I don't know, man. Let's just postmark this. It's Wednesday, June 17th. The president has just canceled the confirmation hearing for Jay Clayton, who is nominated to be the head of the intelligence, DNI, so that his temporary appointee to that, Bill Pulte, who's sort of this comically hackish factotum who basically has been like doing the dirty work for Donald Trump at the mortgage agency, where he apparently has been rooting through people's private mortgage documents so he could gin up pretextual criminal cases against critics. And there's a deal that's going to be signed in Switzerland on Friday. Let me start with this. I thought there was a really interesting moment today. He's at the G7 and he's going on. And I mean, it's truly insane how long he will talk. I still haven't gotten used to it. He basically admitted defeat. He said, I didn't want to be Herbert Hoover. We would have had a great recession, which was like him basically saying, they got me. If it went on much longer, I would have been Herbert Hoover. We had a great recession. I had to kind of knock my king over and walk away from the table. It was a pretty remarkable admission to me of what everyone else who's been watching this has already known.
On the heels of him saying, I love the inflation and I don't think about Americans' financial situation. The truth never comes out. So I'm with you. The idea that we are actually seeing his true lizard brain, like the reptilian, the most essential reptilian sphere of his brain, is an unusual thing, but also a testament to how much this is a surrender, how much this has broke the administration, and the fact that this is the dumbest, we have a history of fighting stupid-ass wars in the Middle East. This is by far the dumbest and the worst. Well, maybe not the worst in terms of loss of life, but pretty fucking bad. Nothing gained.
The only reason it's not the worst, which again, I guess this is a weird thing to give him credit for, is that he knocked the king over pretty fast. Right? Like it wasn't like 5 years of this.
It's the nature of warfare too. I mean, let's just say that technology has changed, which is also why Iran effectively won. But I mean, let's not give any credit here because none is due. This is a white flag. The leaked text of this DocuSign, I cannot call it a deal. The memorandum of understanding, which Iran is saying is not accurate, but it's a wish list. It's a wish list of Iranian demands, and it frees up $300 billion, probably $324 billion for them. They get to own the strait. There's nothing in there about not tolling it. There's almost certainly going to be a tax on anybody that wants to go through there, and there's nothing on nukes. It's just Trump looking for plausible deniability. Like, please stop caring about the nuclear program because I need to fix gas prices in my country at any cost.
There's two bits of reporting floating around today that I loved. One was the speculation, and I don't know if it was from administration source, that maybe we would also share in the tolling revenue.
Yeah, right.
The U.S. and Iran are going in on a joint venture to toll the Strait of Hormuz. Like,
well, he was saying that
whoa.
at the outset of this. He was saying that at the outset of this, which is such a fucking joke. All of it's a joke. I mean, the only thing we might get out of this is like a Qualms Trump hotel, you know, you got real estate guys like working this out. The only thing I think
gorgeous new golf course and resort in Isfahan.
Exactly.
Courtesy.
Listen, if you know Iranian history, the history of Isfahan could have back in the day been an amazing place for
They used to say Isfahan is half the world. That's the saying, the old Persian saying about how beautiful it is.
Couple millennia too late.
Yeah, well, there might be. Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing that's so crazy about it, too, is, the other thing, I just want to say, the other thing that I thought was so funny is there's some anonymous White House source basically said to CNN, the text isn't all of the agreement. We had some understandings not in the text, but the text had to be put this way for domestic political consumption in Iran, the country that quite famously doesn't really have a free and fair elections or a liberal democracy. Right. So like, wait, you're massaging it for their domestic political consumption? Right. You're the one facing midterms.
Also, you guys beheaded their leader. Like, are you really thinking that you need to massage the political situation in Iran? I will say the other thing is, like, I watched J.D. Vance do, I don't know, yeoman's work. What do we call it, on CBS this morning, where he's basically saying the reason nobody has read the text of this, the official text of this MOU, is because of some diplomatic protocols that he doesn't fully understand.
Frankly, I don't understand.
Wait, what? And then Trump also at the G7 saying nobody knows what's in it, but people tend to think it's really strong.
That's the other thing he said.
We live in hell. We live in hell.
No one knows what's in it, but it's very strong. And then you also had today or yesterday, Stephen Chung, who's a White House spokesperson, coming out to say that the text circulating on Bloomberg is wrong. And then your colleague Tommy Vietor being like, all right, that's an easy way to correct it.
Yeah,
show us the text. Go ahead.
I mean, literally, when you have kids, when was the last time they were like, I made something incredible at school and you'll never see it? Like, it's so good. It's maybe the best thing I've ever made. It's completely secret. You'll never see it. This is all so bad. And he's, by the way, like, there was a minute earlier in the week, I don't know if you felt this way, where I felt like there was a lot of throat clearing happening on the left. Like, do we say that this is fucked? Because nobody wants any more bombing in Iran.
Right, exactly. And you don't want to like goad the powers that be into going into war again. Right.
And like we were doing your TV show earlier this week. You don't want Trump to abandon a diplomatic solution, right? Okay. At the same time, this is a load of horseshit. Like, this is so bad. Yeah. I'm quite confident that it'll be worse than the JCPOA. Even if it's status quo and the same thing, which again, I don't think it will be, you will have lost thousands and thousands of lives. At least 3,000 Iranians have died, to say nothing of the toll in Lebanon. You will have upended America's like legitimacy on the global stage. You will have caused like just extraordinary hardship the world over because of these energy shortages. Like, what a fucking chaotic mess. However, like, there was some part of me at the beginning of the week, because there was such hesitancy to come out with full-throated criticism of this thing, which again, we still don't have, that I worried he might be able to get away with the salesmanship, like that people would just look the other way and be like, okay, my gas is $3.86 a gallon. I can abide this guy. And people were saying, oh, maybe this staves off the loss in the Senate. I feel, as we look towards the end of this week, when these jabronis sign this fucking DocuSign in person, that the resounding assessment of this deal is going to be a negative one.
I had exactly a very similar trajectory that you had. And there's two things I would throw in there. One is, nothing is actually settled here. We should just all remember, we're going to go through 90 iterations of, we're about to bomb them, we're going to wipe them off the face of the map. Oh, we're actually best friends and we're entering a joint venture. We'll go through 40 iterations of that before. This is going to kick off some 60-day nuclear negotiating process.
Which will be extended.
Which will be extended and will also involve all of the same performative histrionics and sometimes not so performative threats of force and violence and violations of the ceasefire. Like, it's not like, oh, now we've got a deal. Like, when the JCPOA, after all of that work happened, there was the structure in place of a deal. It was internationally monitored. It was internationally consented to. It had a bunch of stuff binding it in place. None of that exists here. So the idea, like, I hear you, because I feel the same way too. It's like, I don't want war with Iran. I want a diplomatic solution. And if you criticize it from the right, like, are you pushing us towards that? But fundamentally, first of all, Donald Trump doesn't care what we say. And second of all, it's that's going to happen anyway. Like, all this is going to get blown up a million times. Netanyahu's going to go back into Lebanon. The Hezbollah is going to start firing rockets against them. Like, so that one. Two, the thing that I would love to get your read on, because I've been thinking in the same direction of, like, my prediction is that as gas prices come down, which I think they will, I think the Strait will fundamentally open up just because particularly because Iran now gets to sell all its oil unsanctioned. I think as gas prices come down, you will see Trump's approval rating move off its bottom, right? Like, we were basically at what you might call tank bottom of his approval rating, 35%. It'll go back up to sort of pre-war 40, okay? That said, I wonder how much I'm always haunted by the fact that Afghanistan withdrawal broke something about people's perception of the Biden presidency that was a little unfixable. And I wonder how much that's true here with Trump. And, like, did he sort of lose the country, even if he can now try to spin a victory and gas prices go back to something approaching normal?
Well, okay, two things. I think you're totally right that the saga of Iran's nuclear program is completely unfinished business. They may end this administration without a deal. Like,
if I had to bet on it, I would bet that.
They may completely abandon any pretense of trying to stop Iran from enriching uranium, because he has no interest in actually litigating that, managing that. But I think the reason that this entire disastrous war has captured the American imagination, unfortunately, is because Americans felt some pain in their own pocketbooks due to gas prices. And so, right? So I think you're right to sort of wonder whether this is the Rubicon that has been crossed in terms of his popularity, and whether it's a fait accompli that he loses both houses of Congress. And I would say, number one, the context of affordability in the United States is not just gas prices, and they are not going down to pre-war levels when they were intolerable, like when affordability was still a crisis, right? The mines have to be cleared, the refineries have to be brought back online. There's just months more of elevated gas prices, in combination with a president that is completely unconcerned about what his other policies are doing to the American pocketbook, right? So whether it's tariffs, whether it's fertilizer shortages, I mean, none of these sort of huge systems, these huge global systems that we've built, are repairable in a matter of weeks. Yeah. And so, like, people are still going to be feeling economic pain for months. They understand that the Iranian regime is as hardline and is younger than it ever has been. They understand that the nuclear program is a huge question mark. While those might not have been issues that they cared about before, I think it all sort of commingles together with this feeling of being ill-treated by the president. Their problems are being ignored. And that fundamentally, this guy doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. Like, the incompetence, I think, and at the same time as he's gilding the ballroom, and, it's $600 million now, and the fucking reflecting pool is green with algae, like, the level of mendacity and incompetence, coupled with the real piercing pain people feel not being able to afford the doctor, not being able to afford groceries, like having their wages not keep pace with inflation. It all commingles. And so I think the script is written, in other words. I think it's like the combination of these things makes defeat almost, play this back to me in November when Susan Collins is reelected. Right. But I genuinely think that, like, people knew he was clownish when they reelected him, but they thought he could kind of get it done. And not only is he not getting it done, he doesn't give a shit about getting it done.
Yeah, I agree. There's the incompetence, and also just the manifest, the sheer obviousness with which he does not care, and has sort of stopped pretending to care. I mean, he was good at pretending to care in 2024. I went back and, like, looked at some of those clips from that campaign, and him doing the McDonald's thing, which I thought was just a ridiculous bit. You know what? It was a totally effective bit. It was a ridiculous bit, but it was an effective bit. Him driving around the garbage truck, a ridiculous bit, but an effective bit. Again, it was like, sometimes it depresses me the degree to which, like, the coarsest, most lowest common denominator instinct he has proves to be pretty effective.
Well, but I
It
mean,
really bums me out, but he's right in some circumstances. I think he's done pretending. Like, he just can't bring himself to pretend anymore. He wants to talk about his ballroom, and he wants to talk about his, reflecting pool. But the other thing is the degree to which he is so obviously concerned just with himself. My senior producer, Brendan O'Melia, pointed this out today, which is when he got up at the G7 and he was giving this long press conference, he said why he didn't want to keep the war going because of the possibility of a Great Recession or Great Depression. He didn't say, I wanted to avoid a Great Depression. I wanted to avoid breadlines, mass unemployment, economic pain. He said, I was going to be Hoover.
right.
It was like,
Ego.
It had nothing to do with the fact that a Great Depression would mean mass misery for Americans. It was my reputation was on the line. And obviously that's always been true about him. He's probably the most famous egomaniac and narcissist in American history at this point. But the degree to which he can't mask it anymore, I do think comes through. I mean, when we go out and we do these MOSs, like these, man on the street interviews, our reporters are out doing them every day. It's all coming back as like, he doesn't care about me.
Yeah.
He doesn't. Yeah, that has gotten through.
That's how you square the circle of him at once revealing that he doesn't want to be Hoover and also doesn't care about Americans' financial situations, because
Right.
he doesn't care about American financial situations. He may even, in fact, love the inflation because it doesn't actually affect him. But the thing that broke the straw that broke the camel's back is when it started to land on his doorstep and his shoulders, and that he could go down in history as a failed president like Hoover. Say nothing of like what the American public is suffering. He could give a fuck. I would also say, Chris, if this disastrous war and the semi-conclusion, the coda on it, is not enough to keep America, to remind people once and for all of his incompetence, mendacity, and cruelty. There's also the fact that he's apparently planning to go after Cuba and Greenland, like to wipe the slate of clean of Iran by following up this summer with another, invasion or threatened invasion. Like, only a psychotic like a truly mad king would do that. But it's so plausible, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
This guy is like, we'll forget about what happened in Iran. Let's just take some more territory and call it ours.
I think the Iran debacle actually makes Cuba more likely, in the same way that the tactical success of the Venezuela operation is what pitched us over into Iran. I think in Venezuela, they pulled off at a tactical level this pretty sophisticated operation that, from the American perspective, went well. Lots of Venezuelans died in the gun battle, although the majority of them possibly Cubans who were there fighting on behalf of the Venezuelan president. That, I think, got him thinking like, oh, this is easy. We'll just do a decapitation operation in Iran. Now that's gone poorly. And I think you're right that he's going to want to go get the good feeling again. And like, it's a lot easier to pull off a military operation against Cuba than Iran with its 90 million people. It's just totally different scale situation. And I do worry exactly that like he's going to go, it's like seeking a fix.
Yeah, it's a junkie. It's like a regime change junkie. Though, he's consulting the map, though. This time he's like, is there a waterway I need to be aware of? Like, what's in the Caribbean? What about the Labrador? What about the Labrador, whatever the fuck it's called? Do I need to worry about that? Someone bring me a map. Someone bring me a map.
Is there a waterway I need to know about? Well, my favorite thing that he kept saying when the war started and they shut down the strait was nobody thought they would shut down the strait, which I thought was the funniest thing, because it's like, I will fully cop to not being an expert on the region and know very little about it. Basically the only thing that I knew was that there's this thing called the Strait of Hormuz, which is incredibly important to global oil flows, that Iran is likely to shut down if you invade them. Like, I knew one thing about the Strait of Hormuz, and it was that. And he was like, no one saw it coming.
And by no one, I mean literally everyone on
Every
Earth.
single
and
person.
I hope the Indonesians and the Taiwanese are looking at their straits with like renewed interest.
Yeah.
Because if you can now toll natural waterways, hey man, sign them up.
You just got to call them fees. Which is what's going to happen.
It's like hotel rooms where you get charged like a resort fee and like city deposit. What the fuck are they?
Yes,
taxes.
exactly. What do we think about what do you think about Vance and all this?
Oh, this is interesting.
I think it is interesting because he, worked very assiduously to leak through the press to distance himself from the operation. He was initially sent to try to negotiate a deal, and that was like totally didn't work. He was there for a day and he flew back. Ultimately, the people that appear to have negotiated are the president's son-in-law and a business buddy, both of whose entire wealth, well, certainly Kushner, but Witkoff to a growing extent, whose wealth is tied up in interests controlled by the governments in the region.
Yes.
Um,
I think it's 98% of his fund is from Middle Eastern oil interests.
yeah, Kushner. Yes.
Cool. Yes.
So ultimately, they're the ones that I think got this hammered out, and not Vance. But Vance is now the point person to sell it, and he's also sold it. And I thought it was interesting. He went on Megyn Kelly, where he sort of sold it in these very factional terms. He said to Megyn Kelly, like, the neocons never give up and they work the system. And if our side, like if the American firsters don't work the system and work the process, then we're going to get beaten. I thought it was sort of weirdly explicit factional terms. But what do you think about Vance as the now face of this and what it means for him politically?
I just keep thinking, like, at every turn, I'm like, man, Trump loves. Can you imagine being his child? Like, he loves fucking with his progeny. And of course, Vance is the unlucky son of a bitch that has a book coming out this week and was going to like do CBS mornings to promote his like conversion to Catholicism at the precise moment that the Catholic Church is like literally in a locked horn battle with the vice president of the United States. We'll talk about that later. Our episode of Runaway Country this week is focused on JD Vance and like his performance as a vice president and what we should glean about this moment as it portends his future candidacy in 2028. I think it would be challenging for anybody to sell whatever the fuck the administration has done. His shamelessness and his lack of charm always surprise me, right? He's just so, he has no problem lying about the most obviously, his cynicism knows no bounds, right?
Yeah, it's truly, it's awe-inspiring in the worst way.
And he's being asked about like the Epstein files and saying that Donald Trump is the number one, enforcer of justice for the Epstein victims and wanted nothing more than transparency on the files. He's out there talking about how the president hates inflation, even though he said he loved inflation. And of course, he's selling the war that he apparently, has he read the text of the MOU? Trying to sort of spin the $324 billion that Iran is going to get as not something American taxpayers are going to be putting money toward. I guess if you can lie and you're willing to lie without compunction, then you can do a relatively good job. He doesn't crack. Right? He'll get caught saying uncomfortable things like, can I guarantee that this is going to work out? No, I can't make that promise, or, any number of sort of, I don't know, concessions to reality that he's been forced to make. But otherwise, he's been a very dutiful soldier. Yeah. I don't think that's going to help him at all. Like it's all in service of Trump. But as it concerns his standing within the GOP and his electability, I don't think it helps him at all. In fact, I think he's going to have to answer over and over and over again for the fact that he is an America Firster isolationist who then had to go out and sell the war and sell a deal at the end of the war that was a complete surrender to the Iranians.
I also think there's a strange thing happening in the country in which the Republican Party and the country are moving in opposite directions, which is the country is becoming more and more disillusioned with Donald Trump. I just think that's a obviously true fact borne out by every empirical measurement we have, at the same time that his grip over the party as an apparatus is getting stronger and stronger. So there's a gulf widening between what's happening in the party and what's happening out in the country, particularly like the median voter, the cross-pressured voter. And I really think, Vance's bet is total loyalty, total fidelity, while also kind of cultivating the kind of vanguard of Tucker Carlsonism, kind of American first, conspiracy theorists, sort of nationalistic, bigoted and gross, trolly online culture, right? And to me, the big question is what what is the political weight that Donald Trump puts on you a year from now? And will anyone want to be associated with him? Maybe they do. It might be the case. I might be totally wrong on this. It may be the case that he's not that unpopular in the country a year from now, although I'm willing to bet he will be. It may
He
be the
just needs to
case.
get Greenland. He just needs to get
Yes,
Greenland.
that'll be it.
That's all debts are forgiven.
That'll be the thing that gets him. I mean, I just think if you sketch this out, right, the path to the nomination is going to run through him. If he doesn't run again, which is not at all guaranteed, just to be clear, I think there's some part of him, because he's fundamentally like monarchical and feudal in his worldview, that would want one of his kids to be the nominee. I think probably not Don Jr., I think he thinks not well of, and definitely not Tiffany, who he barely remembers is his child, but maybe one of the other two.
Eric?
Or Ivanka. I mean, I think that's a possibility. Point being, if you're Vance, you've made this bet on total that, like, you understand the shot here, right? Be dutiful and loyal to Trump. Trump endorses you. You're the guy. I just think being Trump's guy might be like a real bad position to be in politically a year from now.
I have a hard time understanding the Stockholm syndrome. I mean, I guess I've tried to understand it by calling it Stockholm syndrome of the Republican Party, as I think your assessment that the party is moving, it's like binding itself closer to him at the same time as the country is moving away from him. Like, you see that playing out in Congress, where it's like, guys, you have the power to stop this madness. Like, the behavior of Tom Tillis and John Cornyn and Bill Cassidy is completely flummoxing to me, because not only do they not have any more skin in the game, they're out. They are fundamentally, constitutionally at odds with the agenda of this president, and yet they refuse to act as the bulwark for democracy. In the same way that, I mean, listen, JD could not, he's in the Kamala Harris position of like being interested in running, if not actually running, while trying to have to create, like, while being the vice president, right? So I think there's some loyalty and allegiance baked in that he could never, I mean, he has to be that person as long as he's serving the president. But I just think it comes down to a simple, not only do I think, like, I'm trying to think of like what the storybook illusion is. It's like, well, it's like a Potemkin village. Like, I just feel like as soon as Trump is out of office, I genuinely feel like the stage sets are going to come crash. Which doesn't mean that the fundamental.
I pray that happens.
Well, I feel like the anger,
the nightmare is they put him on the currency. You know,
right? Well, but I think the rage is still there. The sense of disenfranchisement is still there. All the things that gave rise to MAGA very much still exist in American society, and the schism is still there.
Oh, totally, yeah.
But in terms of like other actors being able to come in and play on the set, like, good fucking luck.
I tend to think that's true. The one thing that I think Vance has going for him is I think he's cynical, boundlessly cynical and ruthless enough that if he has to, he can like look into a camera and be like, I have always opposed Donald Trump. And behind the scenes every day, I was working against him at cross purposes because I knew that he was too old and too reckless to be like, literally, he is capable of doing that because I think he is capable of saying anything at all at any time for his own advancement.
But I do think there is an authenticity issue with Vance. Like, if you're just talking about likability and your talent at connecting with people. I mean, Trump is fantastic at this, even though he's hateful to many people. But like those rallies, he's charming. Like, he's like
100%.
JD Vance is
charmless, I find.
Can't order donuts. I mean, like, he can't. He is the worst climber. Like, I do think like non-college educated white men who see themselves in Donald Trump see JD Vance and they're like, you are a climber, you have no principles, and you're a POS.
The other thing, you mentioned Stockholm Syndrome before, and you mentioned John Cornyn. And I've been thinking about this not exit interview, but this interview he gave to the Times after he lost to Ken Paxton, after Donald Trump sort of came in at the last moment and endorsed Ken Paxton in the Texas Senate primary it is truly comical the amount of effort that went into avoiding that endorsement. There was like even this policy they could never have Paxton and Trump in the same place alone. And whenever like if Trump would fly to Texas, Cornyn would make sure to fly with him and other people would, to just kind of like box him in. And Cornyn gives this interview, and I wasn't there, so I can't really judge the tone of voice. And I don't know how much what he said in the interview itself was a performance and how much it was genuine. But taking it at face value, just stipulating for a second, what was really striking about it is my view of most of the behavior of the Republican Party is one of two things. Either they've kind of fried their brains and are kind of radicalized themselves. Like they are true MAGA people. This is their view. They're not doing
John Cornyn giving big MAGA vibes.
Right. So there's a large and growing group of them who just this is the way they're putting the same poison in their brain every day. And then there's people who are just making a calculation about power. Like this is the party I belong to. This is the coalition I want to have power. It's the coalition that gives power to me personally, but also my ideological interests and the material interests that I care for.
Emphasis on material.
Yeah. I think it's all, I think politics is always bound up in a bunch of these different calculations. But I always think it's like they understand that it's a transaction. But what was so weird to me about Cornyn was like he seemed personally hurt by it or surprised. Like it was kind of like you think you know a guy. And he turns around, no amount of loyalty was enough for him. It's like,
what? Hello?
What?
Yes, obviously.
I couldn't get over what he was saying. I was like, now maybe he's performing a form of naivete because it looks worse if he just says like, yeah, it was all transactional and I just came out on the wrong side of the transaction. But it made me think that these people really do have deluded themselves about the nature of him. And I do think that the thing I compared it to is, I think I said this on air, everyone has had people in their lives, really good friends who are in bad relationships, toxic relationships, sometimes abusive relationships. But let's just say really bad ones that aren't abusive. And there's this thing that happens, which is that the person in the relationship has less perspective on the reality of it than people outside of it. So they'll be like, no, but then he said this. And you're like, no, he didn't mean that. He obviously didn't mean that. He was obviously lying to you. But in the relationship, that person thinks it means something.
Love blinders, yeah.
Yeah, and I do think there's some kind of dynamic. It's not quite Stockholm Syndrome. It's just people that are embedded in a toxic relationship who have a way less accurate assessment of it from inside it than outsiders do.
Well, I think much like a political relationship, when it's revealed that the person that you were in the relationship with was a bad actor, there's a sense of not just betrayal, but of shame because you were the one that got conned, right? Like everyone else saw this, but I didn't. And in the Cornyn's case, like the ring kissing, the bowing and scraping was so embarrassing and so at odds with, I think, the kind of person John Cornyn thinks himself to be and, carries himself as, that it's like, joke's on you, kid.
Yeah,
you're the one who got. Like you did all that and you got goose egg for it. And so there's, I think like, you're hurt, not just because he hurt you, but that you hurt yourself by staying in it that long and believing in it the way that you did.
This points to a thing that I think is genuinely one of Trump's true talents and almost a superpower. And he's got a few. One is this sort of shamelessness. The other is that he doesn't have ideological attachments, which I think is actually incredibly helpful. He'll, whatever position is, he doesn't believe in things, which allows you maximum latitude. A thing that happens a lot with him is people always think they're going to be the one to get over on him because he does come off as not super sophisticated and smart. He's kind of crafty and feral, and he has a truly feral instinct for kind of weakness and leverage. And so what you get is a lot of counterparties who think they're going to be the one that get over on Donald Trump, and Donald Trump gets over on them. And that's exactly what Cornyn was like. I'll perform this ridiculous, obviously absurd set of actions where I go outside Trump Burger and I point to the sign, or I pose myself reading Art of the Deal, because this guy's such an idiot and he's so superficially vain that these superficial performances will work for him. I will get over on him. And Donald Trump basically saw through it, by the way, correctly.
Yeah, totally.
Like he chose the person who's probably going to be more loyal to him. I don't think
certainly he has a track record.
Right. He didn't make the wrong choice. Right. So it's like, and that happens time and time and time and time again.
It's like proposing to J-Lo. It's only going to end one way. Don't do it. Much respect to J-Lo, much respect to divorce ladies, but like,
Yes,
this
let's be
is
clear.
this doesn't end well. Like it's not going to end well. But
Yeah.
you know, whatever. Maybe you have to go to the altar and then file for divorce.
Well, that's the
No.
thing, is that to go back around to that interview is like, and to extend the metaphor of like the friend, it's like getting a text from your friend being like, "You're not going to believe this. Donald Trump cheated on me."
Exactly.
You're like, oh my God, real? No,
You don't know.
I can't
couldn't be
believe it.
happening. That guy? Yeah, but it's all. I think it's like they hold on to. They're still holding on to Trump 1.0 shred of dignity, which tells them you are the smarter person in this relationship.
Exactly. Yeah,
You are doing
you got to
this
manage
for
him.
specific ends, and you being there, you being, by virtue of you existing in office, you will counter the worst of his instincts, because you ultimately, John Cornyn, you hold the upper hand.
Yes.
And so they can never really capitulate to the reality that Trump will always hold the upper hand, and they're not actually doing fucking anything but enabling his agenda. That's all they're doing.
And he has, again, everyone thinks they're going to manage him, but he actually does have a pretty good instinct for being managed and for wriggling out. The thing that just happened today is a perfect example. This is right on theme. So Donald Trump announces out of literally nowhere, I mean, truly out of nowhere, didn't consult anyone, didn't talk to anyone, a few weeks back that, Tulsi Gabbard's going to leave as Director of National Intelligence, a position overseeing all the intelligence agencies that was created by the post 9/11 Homeland Security bill. She announces she's leaving. Donald Trump, out of nowhere, says Bill Pulte, the scion of a wealthy family who was a meme stock investor and who was a Twitter troll that Donald Trump plucked from that milieu to make the head of the Federal Housing Finance Agency, FHFA, that Bill Pulte, with zero national security or intelligence experience, will be,
I would say zero intelligence, period. But anyway,
also possibly fair, is going to be the acting director of national intelligence. Now, this was shocking to everyone. I mean, this would be like Chris Hayes is going to be the starting goalie for the USA men's soccer team in the World Cup.
That would make more sense.
Like, this person has no business doing this job, but the one qualification he clearly has is that he's the only person that we know of, I think, who was sort of clear, who's used his position of access to secret government data to extract that data about Trump's critics and opposition party leaders so that the regime can prosecute them. He's I think the only one that we are sure has done that, or 95% sure, although I don't think he did this with the housing documents for Letitia James, Lisa Cook at the Fed, Adam Schiff, on and on. Trump clearly wants Pulte in the position to do the same with a much larger portfolio of documents. Republicans in the Senate freaked out because I don't think they particularly have moral objections to Pulte doing that, although some of them might, but it's also a real job to stop the U.S. from terrorist attack.
They could also redound to their disadvantage because Bill Pulte could be asked to find stuff on them.
Abso-freaking-lutely. Yes, exactly. So they freak out and they come up with a solution to route around Donald Trump as opposed to confronting him, which is Trump says, no, don't worry, it's just temporary. He said, and Trump even said, he's just going to be there for a few months and maybe he'll get to the bottom of the rigged election.
He's just going to take a couple thumb drives out with him on his way out.
Exactly.
And it's fine.
/ he'll be there basically saying he'll be there through the midterms. So the Republicans freak out. They pressure Trump to name a permanent DNI who would actually be confirmed. This is just this is just an acting Bill Pulte. He doesn't need Senate confirmation. And then once Trump does that and he names a U.S. Attorney Jay Clayton, who, by the way, is no great shakes either, they then try to outmaneuver Trump by being like, great, Jay Clayton, he's got a confirmation hearing 3 days later and we'll confirm him the next day. Meaning Bill Pulte's term in this acting position will be 4 or 5 days. Well, today, Donald Trump says, no. I'm canceling Jay Clayton's confirmation hearing. And the reason he's doing that is because he wants Bill Pulte in the acting position through the midterms. He wants him there for a while so he can get the thumb drives. But it's another example of them being like, we're the clever ones. We'll outmaneuver him. We'll get over on him by doing this thing without ever having to confront him. And Trump's like, no, I see what you're doing, and blows the whole thing up.
And adds, if you were concerned that maybe that formal election fraud would be somehow scuttled. He's like, if you want to reauthorize the FISA
Yes.
Act, you got to pass the SAVE Act as well,
Yep.
which is my
Yep.
formalized election interference bill,
Yep.
which they don't have enough Republican votes to pass. But it's like he's continuing to wage the war of election interference on two fronts.
Yep. And it's also clear that like there's a little bit of a pivot to like, you know, now it's time for him to focus. He's done with his Iran excursion, and it's now time to focus on essentially
Yes,
rigging the
rigging the midterms.
what's the the Jan 6 the midterms, which is the short term I use for it. I really do think that that's what we're going to see. I think your rational expectation has to be he will try everything at his disposal, legal, illegal, constitutional, unconstitutional, violations of gray area norms, which is like the gerrymandering, which is like technically legal, but I think a gross violation, to like explicitly criminal behavior along that spectrum to push the midterms towards Republicans.
I completely agree with you. I think that everybody's focus should go towards the midterms because Trump's focus is certainly there. I think that there needs to be constant monitoring about what's happening with the slush fund, which we have, reporting from the Atlantic to suggest that they continue to try and figure out ways to pay out violent insurrectionists who are sort of Trump's private paramilitary that could come in handy for election day chicanery. I think Tulsi Gabbard is out on Friday, right?
I think that's
19th.
right. Yes, and I think that's why they wanted to get that Clayton. They wanted to get Clayton done by her last day. Yeah, right.
Right. Like literally 2 hours of Bill Pulte as DNI is 2 hours too many. So, I mean, it's hard to even like know where to sit on this because there's also, I don't want to get too weedy. There are other nominations that Donald Trump wants to have fast tracked to get Jay Clayton. He's making excuses basically about why Jay Clayton cannot be DNI head. And without getting too weedy on that, I don't know what the process in the Senate is. I'm not a Senate parliamentarian here.
Right.
But I wonder if they can then, I don't think anybody's going to necessarily call Trump's bluff on this, but to at least notionally give him the fast track the nomination that he wants so that Clayton can actually then be formally nominated to be DNI.
Yes, he came up with this pretextual reason, which is that Jay Clayton's job right now, which is U.S. Attorney Southern District in New York, was a very powerful position in the Justice Department. It's what Preet Bharara was. It's what Jim Comey was and Rudy Giuliani once upon a time. That there'll be a vacancy there. So you got to figure out who's going to replace him first. Now, this is just obviously manifestly BS because the guy doesn't care about vacancies. There's vacancies all over all the time. It's him blowing up the plot to get Clayton in and avoid Pulte. I also think, again, and just to go around to the other side, which is that he does have this weird feral intelligence. He does have a way of getting over on people that think they'll get over on him. I also think he's also not that sophisticated a thinker and does have like a weirdly cartoonish and childlike understanding of everything in the world. And I think he thinks there's like some like control room that Bill Pulte will go into and be like, on day one, like literally the thumb drive. It's just like, it doesn't work that way. Yeah. So that's the other thing. It's like in the same way he was like, that reflecting pool looks green, paint the bottom blue. That'll solve it. It's like, no, that's not the way it works.
I delight in that. I look at it every day.
It wasn't the bottom.
Can you guys get a cam like at MS Now?
We did a whole. I did a whole.
But I want a live cam. I want a live cam. I want to see them pouring hydrogen. I want to see them pouring hydrogen peroxide into the reflecting pool. I want to see the daily sort of manifestations of shame that come in and around this pool so clearly at the problems with mold and algae not being fixed.
My favorite part of this, just to stay on this for a second, so people know the reflecting pool saga, which is they paid $13 million in no bid contract to paint the bottom American flag blue, and it immediately turned green because there's an algae bloom because the problem wasn't the color of the bottom of the pool ever. Duh. And my favorite was the images of the poor Parks Department, Park Service workers. They're in their safety vests and they have boxes of gallon jugs of hydrogen peroxide. It had the vibe of like if you ever do like you put on an event or you're doing a shoot and at the last minute you're like, oh shoot, we need something. And then you get someone who's like an assistant or a page or someone. They're like, go to the True Value hardware store and buy as much hydrogen peroxide as you can. Like you just shove money in their hand. They like go and they come back and these guys are standing along the edges pouring gallon jugs of hydrogen. That is not the way that you actually deal with this. There's a chemist online who was calculating the parts per million you have to
Right,
achieve
totally.
to do it. And then someone also had the Die Workwear guy had a very funny post. It was either a drone or chopper shot of the pool. And what you could see is that he said it was like a Mark Rothko painting where the blue had reemerged just around the edges of the pool where the hydrogen peroxide had been dumped, and it was green in the middle.
This is why we need a cam. This is why we need a cam.
You know what? I'm going to work on that. I'm going to pitch that to my bosses.
It is such a metaphor, isn't it?
Oh my God, it's the most.
It's like maybe
It's
like
the most perfect.
when the history books try and put context into this hideous fucking chapter of our democracy, the reflecting pool. It's a real placeholder for like everything Trump is trying to do to this country and the corrosion of the Republican Party.
It's the perfect story in so many ways. I'm writing my first work of history, and you just wrote a history. And I sometimes think to myself, like, oh, what a fun 100 years from now, this will be such a fun story for someone to discover, because it'll probably sort of fade to the background, and someone will like get the reflecting pool story and be like, oh my God, you're not going to believe what they did. The reason that it's so perfect is at every level. One is it starts with a petty grievance against his predecessors. Like they screwed it up, because there actually was there was a big renovation of the reflecting pool during the Obama administration.
And it's been, it's an ongoing problem that requires like real infrastructure upgrade that's very expensive.
Yes, and they did a big thing. And again, I think it looks fine, but it still has these like algae blooms. It's also an enormous it's very hard to maintain a body of water like that. So it starts with that. There's the unbelievable micromanaging. He is the president of the United States. The president. He spends, if you look at a pie chart, 10 to 15% of his time publicly talking about the reflecting pool.
I think when all is said and done, it's probably occupying like 40% of his thinking.
I mean, it's
the beautification, the reimagining of Washington, D.C. in his own image.
Yes. And then that's the other thing, is that it's all about vanity. And then it's totally corrupt because there's a no-bid contract they gave with some enormous profit
to the guys
margin.
that work on the pools at Bedminster.
Yes, exactly. Like, I know a guy who had no experience in this kind of thing. It's also aesthetically, like, it looks bad, like the blue on the bottom. And then it just didn't work because he doesn't understand how anything works. And now my favorite was, what was the sentence yesterday? The nano bubbler, we're now investing in nano bubbler technology, which is already killing the algae bloom.
Great. I was thinking metaphor more philosophically, like there's this rot undergirding American society, right? Where people are experiencing pain, they've lost faith.
Oh, wow.
We've lost community. That's the algae, right? This rot and this kind of unabated, like spiritual decay. And here comes Trump promising fast, easy fixes. And all he's done is made it fucking worse with like just fucking around on the edges for way more money.
That is so perfect. Yes, that's right. I alone will fix it. And it's like the bloom is still there. The algae is still there. And you can't just paint it over. You can't just bring in you can't just
you have
put
to do
a new
structural
coat.
change.
Yeah, you got to do something
change.
deeper.
Calling all Elizabeth Warren fans, big structural change. That's what you need. That's the only way you fix the problem. You can't just pour a bunch of fucking bleach in at the corners. And also the bleaching of the attempted bleaching of the country. It's all working. Someone used this metaphor somewhere. Isn't there a poet laureate that can at the Newsom inauguration or whatever? Like,
it is good.
Something about swimming pools. I don't know. Reflecting pools.
Well, I'm not going to top that. Alex Wagner is the host of Runaway Country on Crooked Media. She's an MS Now senior political analyst, and also she writes the How the Hell Substack. She has a book. We'll be very mysterious about it, but there's a book. There's an Alex Wagner book.
Nobody knows what's in it, but people think it's very strong.
We'll find it. And you can't see it.
Nope.
You can't see it.
It's a page and a half, though. You'll be able to read it quickly.
Oh, what a fun hour, Alex. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.